What would you do if Mark Driscoll was your pastor? Now, maybe you want to flatten that out and just talk about any authoritarian person. I think most of us have been in undesirable authoritarian context, and that's really what I want you to focus on in this video here. But what would you do if Mark Driscoll was your pastor, if he was the authoritarian person in your life? Let's say that you decided to stay in the church, but you're opposed to the language, the bullying, the manipulation, the narcissism. Well, how would you respond? I mean, there are about three different options here. You could choose to self censor. You could choose to be part of a redemptive effort to speak into his life and try to make a difference. Or you may find that that would be futile, and so you just choose to leave the authoritarian context, in this case, leave the church. Responding the right way to authoritarians is the topic of this episode from the Christianity Today podcast series, The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill. Hello, everyone. This is Rick Thomas. I'm doing an ongoing review of the podcast series from Christianity Today, The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill. This is episode 10 that I'm going to review for you, and the title of it is The Bobby Knight Problem. Now, what I want to do in this review is just do a very quick summary about what the episode was about. I want to spend most of the time giving you some application tips that will serve you, because I think most of us have been in those undesirable authoritarian contexts. And so I just want to give you some ideas that will help you to think about, one, self-censoring and why that might not be a great idea. And then two, how to proceed if you choose to speak into the authoritarian's life. But first, let me do that quick flyby of the episode. It began by Mike Hosper talking about Ted Haggard from Colorado Springs, who fell into sexual sin, and Mark Driscoll commenting on that. Mark Driscoll said that some women let themselves go, and it was an implied accusation about the complicity of wives when men fall into sexual sin. It was a stunning statement, but I heard the soundbite with my own ears, and it was just unbelievable that Mark would say something like that. Well, the accumulative effect of Mark Driscoll and Mars Hill in the Seattle area, it began to stir up a number of people. And one of the people in this episode was a lady by the name of Rose Sweatman. Now, she was a pastor in Seattle, and I put pastor in quotation marks, but nevertheless, Rose and her husband and a few other people, they wrote Mark and they asked, can we get together and talk? And so they did get together and talk, and those conversations just went around in a circular fashion, and there really wasn't much accomplished. And then from there, Mike swung over to Indiana, and he spoke about the godlike status of Bobby Knight, the former coach of the college basketball team, the Indiana Hoosiers, and he talked about the fallout and the damage of Bobby Knight's antics. If you're not familiar with Bobby Knight, I mean, a couple of illustrations where he threw a metal chair across a gymnasium floor in a fit of anger. Another time he choked one of his players, which that was the beginning of the end of Bobby Knight as far as his tenure at Indiana, as far as coaching the team. There were many other subpoints in this episode, but the main reason, or the major reason to connect Bobby Knight with Mark Driscoll was that Mike Hosper wanted to make the point that the end justifies the means. Now, he has been talking about pragmatism throughout these episodes, and that was his primary point in this episode, was pragmatism. But also, Mike did wonder why a person would enable someone like Bobby Knight or someone like Mark Driscoll. I thought that was an excellent question. And that's one of the things that I want to apply to my life, and I trust what I share with you in this video will be beneficial to you. But not just why would we self-censor by enabling someone, but when it is time to stand, how do you do it? And so what I want to talk about, I want to deal with the first question, why would we enable someone like Mark Driscoll or the authoritarian in your life? And I want to give you 8 reasons a person would choose to self-censor and therefore enable a person like Mark Driscoll. And then the second question, I want to lay out a process for speaking into the authoritarian's life. And so let's talk about the enablers, people who choose to self-censor, and by not speaking up, they are in essence enabling the authoritarian in their life. Well, one of the reasons that a person would enable or self-censor is the cost. You see, the enablers have a vested interest in Mark Driscoll staying in his position as pastor of that church. They want the church to succeed, which goes back to the pragmatism that is the damage of what's happening worth, or is the success of what's happening worth the damage that it's causing. But when you're on staff at a local church, and by the way, I was in this authoritarian context in another church, and I was serving with the manipulating, bullying pastor, and I had to wrestle through that tension. Do I say something or not? If I self-censor, I am enabling, but if I speak up, I can lose my job. And so as I share these points here about 8 reasons a person will enable, I don't want you to hear criticism or condemnation. These are real tensions that people struggle with, and I struggled with all 8 of them because I was there. But one of the reasons that a person would enable an authoritarian is because of the cost. If this thing goes to pot, if it blows up, then I'm out of a job, and that is a huge deal. Number 2 is fear. They are afraid to say anything because of intimidation and retribution. There is a cost to speak out against something that you do not like, something that is objectively wrong. And many people will choose the perceived path of least resistance. Of course, it's not a path of least resistance, but because of fear and the conflict that it would cause, they choose rather just to self-censor, which enables the person to continue on. And so number 1, the cost involved in speaking up. Number 2, the fear involved in speaking up. Number 3, they are unaffected. The abuse does not affect them. It's like out of sight, out of mind. Maybe it's like the reports that we hear from time to time of things that happen on the other side of the country. Well, when it's happening on the other side of the country, it's hard to be as affected as if it is happening to you. And so we tend to engage only at the last minute after this tsunami rolls over us. It rolls over our banks. And so one of the reasons that a person would enable is because quite frankly, they're not affected by what is going on. Number 4 is justification. They don't want to see it. The enablers manipulate their thinking to overlook what is happening right in plain sight. They justify or rationalize their consciences. Each time you justify, you're just laying down this thin layer over your conscience. After a while, your conscience will stop speaking to you, your inner voice. You'll become desensitized to what is happening in front of you because of the ongoing justifications or rationalizations. Sometimes they even blame the authoritarian's actions on the victims. Blaming, rationalizing, justifying, all of those responses to abuses that you see, well, it will begin to desensitize your conscience. So number 4 is justification. And then one that's similar to that, but I wanted to draw it out and let it stand on its own merit, and that is to normalize. In this episode of the Christianity Today episode, they interviewed Rachel Denhollander, and she's the one that said this. But sometimes we can look at behavior so long, and again, it's similar to justification. Maybe the process is we justify it so often that it becomes normal to us, and maybe that's the way to think about it. So number 4 was justification. We desensitize our conscience until now, well, this is just normal behavior. It's okay. It's not that big of a deal. Worse things are happening in the world. And so number 5 is that we normalize it. And then number 6 is pragmatism. And again, this is a running theme through this series. They become pragmatic. It is the formula of success versus damages. And it's tempting to look at all the good that is happening, and then you justify the process for those good outcomes. And so the end of success justifies the means or the damages that's involved in getting to that success. And again, that's pragmatism. Number 7 is work. Anytime you speak into conflict, there will be a bigger conflict that's going to happen. Some folks would look at the scale of the problem and what it would take to work through it, and they would just choose not to engage. And so the work ethic, the work aspect that's involved could tempt a person to self-censor, which again enables the authoritarian. Number 9 is control. And what I mean by that is that they work overtime in doing damage control. They try to control or manage the situation. It's the how can I keep what I have while mitigating the damages that is causing mindset. And so they want to live in both worlds, to straddle the fence. I want to keep what I have. That goes back to the cost point, number 1. But yet I'm going to work to control, do damage control, and if I can live in that kind of construct, then I will be okay. Of course, you're not going to be okay at all. And so there's 8 reasons why a person will self-censor, or you could say 8 reasons why a person would enable an authoritarian. Number 1, the cost involved. There's too much cost, and they just don't want to take the hit. Number 2 is fear. They are afraid of retribution. They're intimidated. Number 3 is they're unaffected. It's happening over there. It's not happening to me. Number 4 is justification, that they manipulate their minds to rationalize or justify what is happening. Then number 5 is normalization. After so many justifications, they normalize the behavior. This is the way it's always been. It's okay. Number 6 is pragmatism. They weigh the success versus damages formula, and they put the accent mark on success rather than the damages that it's causing. Number 7 is work. There's too much work in stepping into this mess. And then number 8 is control or management. They try damage control as a way of not dealing with the problems. There's 8 reasons the person will self-censor and enable. Well, when it's time to speak up, then you do have to weigh each situation on its merits. And so I want to wrap up this video by giving you a few thoughts about how to engage an authoritarian. And these thoughts are in a sequential order, an increasing order of intensity. It gets tougher and tougher as I move along. And so I want to share 7 things with you. Number 1, sometimes we can just overlook the problem. I mean, we can just overlook it because it's okay. Or maybe it's okay to overlook it. Or you're playing a long game with the person. You have a future date with that person, and you don't want to speak into a particular thing at this point. Parents do that all the time, by the way. A kid does something, you don't want to nickel and dime the kid, but you have a long game in mind here, and you know that there'll be a future encounter with this person. So sometimes it may be possible just to overlook at this moment. Number 2, you're unsure of the situation, whether I should overlook it or whether I should engage it. So therefore, you want to seek wise counsel. Now, the question will always come up, is it gossip to ask a competent friend about a matter in the context of what I'm talking about here? The idea of talking about someone to somebody else, it's really tied to the motivation of your heart. If your motivation is redemptive, that you really want to bring reconciliation, you really want to bring a resolution that would spread the fame of God and unite the body of Christ, if that's your motivation, then it is okay to seek wise counsel, but as someone who can legitimately speak into it. They are biblically competent, and they have the courage not to rubber stamp you and to maybe give you a perspective that you did not perceive at the moment. And so number 2, if you're unsure whether to overlook or speak into it, then maybe it's wise to seek counsel, an individual who can actually help you. Number 3, if you're not afraid of the individual and they can't hurt you, then maybe it's wise to go to them and meet with them and have that meeting. But please understand those conditions. You're not afraid of them where you're strapped by the fear of man or the fear of them, of the individual, and they can't harm you. If they can harm you, you can't talk to them. And what I mean by being afraid is sometimes you can be so gripped by fear by the intimidating, authoritative person that you won't have clarity of mind. And if you go into a context like that, they will gaslight you. They will manipulate you. they will twist you up so much that you don't know whether you're going or coming. And it would not be wise for you to go in alone to talk to that kind of person, authoritarian type person. And so number one, maybe you want to overlook it. Number two, maybe you want to seek wise counsel. Number three, if you're not afraid and they can't harm you, you can engage them. Number four, if the person is hurting someone else, then you have to speak into it. You may not speak to the authoritarian or the abuser, but you need to bring light to it. That's just straightforward. If they're hurting someone, and if you know to do good and do not do it, then it would be sin to you. And so if they're hurting someone, you need to speak into it. That's number four. Number five, if you and others do speak to this person and they refuse to listen to you, then you want to begin a process of Matthew 18, starting at verse 15. You really want to intensify it and bring more and more people in. If you've talked to the person and they won't listen, then you want to gather a right size and appropriate community of people. And this is what Rose, the lady in this episode, tried to do with a group of friends. And of course, it didn't go anywhere, but I do commend her for wanting to gather some folks together to confront Mark about some of his antics. And then number 7, I think, or 6, if the person will not repent, you may have to leave the church. See, here's the thing, that if they won't repent and there's nothing that you can do about it, and you can't make it right in your conscience. I mean, you just can't make this right. This is not right. Well, what will happen if you stay in that toxic environment Sunday in and Sunday out? What will happen is that eventually you will start sinning, and then you will become divisive. So for your own conscience sake and own sanctification sake, you may need to just leave it, and there's nothing that you can do. You've tried all of these things, and there's nothing that you can do. And then finally, if the person is breaking the law, then you have to report that person or report that organization to the law. This is another instance where you have to stand up and speak out. You can't enable and you can't self-censor. This would be similar to the Sovereign Grace situation, to where they covered up sexual abuse for multiple decades, like 2.5 decades, if not more. And then the individual, Nathan Morales, was actually prosecuted. He got 40 years in prison for sexual abuse that Sovereign Grace Ministries covered up. You can't do that. I mean, if the law is being broken and you are aware of it, you have to speak into it. It could be that you're wrong, but again, you can't let something like that go. So I'm reviewing the episode number 10. This is the Bobby Knight problem, is what they called it, from the series from Christianity Today, The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill. And the big question, or the two big questions that I'm wanting to, that I've interacted with, is why do people enable? Why do they self-censor? And I trust if any of those things apply to you, that you would work through those, because we do need to have more courage when we see abuses happen. And then the second aspect was this intensifying list, a process of speaking into it. Maybe you overlook it. Maybe you call the police. It just depends. If you want to talk about this, or if you have something else on your mind, please do not hesitate. Go to our ministry's website and jump on our free community forums, and we would love to engage you. If you appreciate the videos that we're putting together here, hit the subscribe button and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then also share these videos with your friends. Thank you so much for watching.